Hey, what's up everybody? We are back again, and holy shit, did you guys ever love that Anthony Fantano video? Everybody absolutely agreed with everything I had to say and really supported me on that one. But no, for real, I know the video was pretty controversial, but overall I am very happy that I have such a wide-spanning community with so many different diverse opinions. I never want to have a complete echo chamber because if I ever get that, well, I'm probably going to end up like Fantano. Or even worse, the other topic of today's video, Ronnie Radke. Now, if you've never heard of this guy before, I would be very surprised because he's probably one of the biggest artists that I've ever talked about before on this channel. He's the infamous frontman for Falling in Reverse and probably a lot more well known for being a complete schizo, having beef with absolutely everybody online and not taking criticism very well at all, which funnily enough makes him and Fantano very similar, but despite that, they don't get along all that well. And the reason behind that, in my opinion, is pretty interesting because it all comes down to a situation that happened in 2023 between Ronnie Radke and another YouTuber who you probably heard of very recently, going by the name of Brad Taste of Music. So this guy here, Brad, basically got popular on YouTube for being a music reviewer, probably the second biggest one on the entire platform besides Fantano, although he did things a little bit differently. Because reviewing music on YouTube has always been kind of a difficult task. I'm not saying that making the videos is all that difficult, it's more so the fact that most record companies will not let you review their music or listen to it in any way without hitting you with a copyright strike. That's why in my videos I very rarely ever show the music that I'm talking about, because while you can get away with a couple seconds of a track and probably not get dinged by the system, it's kind of hard to make a specific point about a song when you can only play like 2 seconds of it. But despite that, some people have found ways to get around it. For example, when Anthony ends up doing his reviews, he doesn't actually play the music in the videos anymore, because if he did, he would be constantly fighting with different record labels and wouldn't be able to put anything out, which does hurt the reviews a little bit because basically the only way that you can truly enjoy them is if you sit down, listen to the album for yourself, and then go check them out. Or I guess you could listen to it before you listen to the album, but I don't know anybody who really does that. Let's be honest, whether we're talking about video game reviews, album reviews, movie reviews, nobody actually uses them for their intended purpose, which is basically watch the video, see if the thing is good before you spend money on it. Most people who are watching them have already bought the thing and either really hate it or really like it, and they want to go get another opinion on whatever form of media it might be, although in most cases people really only want to hear their own opinion echoed back at them, and anything that's different is really going to piss them off. That's why in general I really hate the discourse around any form of album, movie, or video game, because 9 times out of 10 you got the popular guys simply saying the popular opinion because, well, that's what people want to hear, and then you got guys who go out of their way to try to piss you off because they want to get a reaction out of you, which isn't a very good review either because they're not really giving you any nuance. It's basically, this thing is the worst thing ever made, or this is the best album that I've ever heard in my entire life and I would sell my firstborn daughter just to give it another listen. And Anthony is an absolute master of baiting people with his reviews. He basically calls everything that people like terrible because of course he's going to get a bunch of comments, and then everything that people don't like he gives like a 9 out of 10. I think at one point he was a legitimate music reviewer, but at this point he's basically doing it for a reaction. Like I said in my previous video, he really gets off on the fact that people don't like him, which you'll really notice by the way that he responded to the entire controversy around him saying the N-word. He basically put out a super smarmy response where he deflected the blame onto other people and then immediately started working with controversial figures to make people more upset. And while personally I think Anthony is kind of a douche, I can't really be all that mad at him because after all, it's working. If I don't like him, that's basically what he wants. He wants people to be upset. And honestly, in a weird way, I kind of have to respect him because any form of online influencer who can take all the negativity thrown at them and not really let it bother them is a very powerful person. Because pretty well the only way that you can actually get quote unquote canceled online is if you stop making content and let the mob win by constantly appealing to them. But if you don't give a fuck, well, there's not really anything that anybody can do, as long as you don't get caught in like a really bad scandal. But honestly, even in a situation like that, James Charles actually managed to rebound after the allegations that he got. So honestly, keep posting through it and you will probably survive, as gnarly as that is. However, unlike Fantano, Brad Taste in Music took a very different approach because while Anthony does also live stream many of his reviews, he's mostly known for the YouTube videos that he does, whereas Brad was more so known for the live streams. With the whole appeal of these live streams basically being that people would pay him to listen to terrible music, and while he wasn't able to make any ad revenue off of these streams because of copyright, he was getting so many donations that it really didn't matter. And because of that, Brad had a pretty easy ride on YouTube. All he had to do was stream like 10 hours a week or even more if he wanted to, get a ton of donations, and basically be set for life. But before long, he would start to run into issues, with one artist in particular, who of course is Ronnie Radke. And like I mentioned before, Ronnie really doesn't like when people talk badly about him. Whether you're talking about his music, his persona, or any of his past actions, he doesn't want to hear any of it. If you're not completely praising him, he's probably going to come after you. But apparently Brad wasn't aware of that because he would turn it into a whole staple of his channel to basically make fun of his music, with many people giving him massive donations to listen to it and actively shit on it, which before long was of course going to get back to Ronnie. And how do you think he responded? Do you think he put out a couple mean tweets, maybe made a YouTube video where he responded to the criticism, called Brad out, maybe said he was ugly or something like that? Well, no, he took it a step further and he actually ended up copywriting several of his videos on the channel. Which, if you don't know about YouTube copyright, if you get 3 strikes, your channel basically ends up getting taken down. Nowadays, YouTube is a little bit more hands-on when it comes to copyright strikes. I actually recently got one on my second channel for the video that I did on Little Boom, and YouTube just outright rejected it, which I've never seen before, but honestly, thank you YouTube, because it was bullshit. However, back in the day, they were very hands-off about the entire thing, basically saying if you got a copyright strike, that's your problem, sucker. We don't really give a shit. Honestly, we don't want to get involved with the whole legal situation, so basically, we're going to take the video down, put a strike on your channel, and if you want to appeal, well, it's going to take about 15 days. And the thing about this type of situation is that 9 times out of 10, you usually end up winning because basically the way it works is that the person sends you a copyright strike, you then can appeal, giving them 15 days to present you with legal papers, basically saying they're going to take you to court. But let's be honest, most of the people who are actually making these claims don't want to go to court and actually have to deal with a lawsuit, so they only do this with hopes that you won't fight back and appeal out of fear. I've had this happen to me about 4 times between both of my channels, with probably the most famous example being when Danny Towers ended up putting a copyright strike on the video I made about him. The way that he was able to do this was because I put about 3 seconds of one of his songs within that video, and well, the video was about him being a massive scam artist, which obviously he didn't want out there as it would hurt his reputation. He ended up copywriting the clip, so I would then cut it out, put the video back up. He would then somehow copyright the same clip again, even though I had already removed it. And then after that, I would then put it up again with a couple more seconds cut out. And then after that, he ended up copywriting some of the music videos that I use for background footage, which I've never really seen anybody do before. And unfortunately, I couldn't really do anything about it because I had used so much of the music video that cutting it all out would completely destroy the video. So I had to appeal, which at the time I was pretty scared to do, as after all, Danny Towers is signed to Empire Records, which is a pretty big company. However, I did go through with it and he never ended up pressing it any further than that. The video is now back up, but as you can see, I had to deal with a lot of bullshit over a 5-second clip in a music video. So as you can probably tell, getting copyrighted by Ronnie Radke on a stream where you're listening to his entire project is probably a lot worse. And it seems like Ronnie was pretty proud of himself because he would go on to DM Brad saying, haha, I got your videos taken down, with Brad tweeting out, dude just blocked every video I made on him. I've never had somebody so obsessed over me in the way that this guy is. And well, you got to keep in mind that Brad was actually pretty liked at the time, so people actually ended up taking his side. On top of that, Ronnie actually ended up going after Fantano as well, with them getting into an entire Twitter war. Now, I can't find the actual tweets because I think Ronnie ended up deleting his side of things, things, but there is an article written about it which basically goes into detail. So all of this would kick off in early 2023 when Anthony ended up putting out a video called Review Roundup, where he ended up reviewing one of Falling in Reverse's latest singles. Within that video, he would compare Ronnie Radke to Tom MacDonald, which I gotta say is pretty disrespectful, but if you're making music in any way, you gotta be willing to take criticism. He would also go on to say that it was cringe and that the bars were hard to bear, basically saying that it was a bad song. And Ronnie would end up responding to this with a tweet where he says the needle drop is like Paris Hilton of music critics. He looks 25 years older than he is and nobody will care about him in 3 years. And honestly, considering that Fantano is almost 40 years old, I think he looks alright for his age, and it's almost 2026, so I don't think he was quite right on his prediction of nobody caring about him in 3 years. And of course, Anthony would immediately respond to this by putting out a tweet showing 2 different pictures of him 10 years apart and then 2 different pictures of Ronnie 10 years apart, saying, I objectively look like I put on less years than you, so I think I'm winning. And honestly, if I went into a bar and I had to go home with Fantano or Ronnie, I think I'd probably pick Ronnie. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be an enjoyable experience and I'd probably have to listen to his terrible music, but at least I wouldn't have to talk to him when I was listening to the music. With Anthony, he would definitely talk about politics the entire drive home, not to mention you would have to look at his shiny bald head, which would probably blind you. But honestly, that might be a positive because then you wouldn't have to look at him. But either way, I think I'll take Ronnie. Ronnie would then respond saying the funny thing about the right pick as opposed to the blonde pick, the blonde pick is 5 years later than the right pick of me, ha ha ha, you were born looking old. Anthony would then respond by saying you look like that after 5 years, what's your secret, cocaine? And honestly, pretty weak comeback, I'm not gonna lie. Ronnie dismantled you with facts and logic and all you can do is an ad hominem attack. I mean, come on Anthony, you're better than this. Objectively, he's in the lead. Ronnie would then respond by saying, well, truthfully, the right picture was taken in 108-degree weather in an Arizona parking lot on stage. The other was taken 5 years later in a room. You're only 3 years younger than me. And at this point, now I think Ronnie is actually losing. He's kind of explaining a little bit too much. I mean, yeah, I know I looked ugly in that one picture, but it was really sweaty, bro. You gotta understand. And the other one, that was in a room, so that's why I look better. I feel like you're doing way too much explaining. Just call him bald and ugly and move on with your day. After that, Fantano would simply respond by saying he admitted the gap between the picks is 5 years, which honestly, kind of cooked on that one. I think Fantano is kind of taking the lead here. Come on, Ronnie, you need to come back with some heat. And honestly, his response is very weak, basically saying that all of Fantano's fans are bots from India and that basically he's so negative that eventually another YouTuber is going to come out, expose him, and then he's going to disappear, which very rarely ever happens, but I kind of see what he's trying to say. First of all, we already know that all of Anthony's fans are white people with the savior complex. I mean, that's common knowledge at this point. And second of all, I think Anthony's a little bit too big to fail. The only way I could actually see him getting canceled is if he ends up getting in some sort of sex scandal, but even with that, I couldn't see him going away completely. He has a very, very loyal fan base that he's been building up over the course of 15 years, and OG YouTubers get a lot more leniency than anybody who comes later. But anyways, after that, Ronnie wouldn't say anything else, with Anthony finally closing it off by saying, this entire altercation is nowhere near as cool as the Drake beef. I'm sorry, I'll try harder next time. And honestly, I get it, Drake is bigger, it's more interesting to see him crack, but I think Ronnie Radke and Anthony Fantano are actually perfect enemies. They're so opposite in so many different ways. I mean, Fantano can take criticism, Ronnie can't. Ronnie likes to say offensive things to get people's attention. I guess Anthony does too, but he's also super liberal, so he would never put up with that. It's kind of like they were made to be arch enemies. And that's basically what ended up happening, because while the tweet war would eventually go cold and they wouldn't really interact with each other for a couple months, after Ronnie ended up coming after Brad Taste of Music, Anthony had no choice but to defend his son. With him immediately coming out with a video called This Guy Sucks, where he would talk about Ronnie's entire career, how he couldn't take criticism, all of the stuff with Brad, implying that Ronnie was transphobic and racist, basically all the average Fantano talking points, while also taking things a little bit farther by bringing up all the past allegations that Ronnie has had, which included a rape case, which he ended up settling out of court, a time that he ended up throwing a bunch of microphones into the audience, hurting a couple of his fans, some abuse allegations, and a whole lot more. Which of course made Ronnie really mad, which I can kind of understand, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it seems like he was able to disprove a lot of the allegations made against him, and while he definitely is kind of a weird and somewhat shitty dude, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's a monster or an abuser. This is something that I really don't like about the modern day internet, the way that people will weaponize allegations to go against people that they don't like. Basically, as soon as you get any sort of negative reputation online, people think it's open season to bring up anything. And that's not me trying to defend Ronnie in any way. All I'm saying is that if these allegations are actually true, then you should give them a little bit more respect than randomly, offhandedly bringing them up in a video where you're trying to shit on him. I mean, all Anthony did was put a bunch of random headlines on screen for like 2 seconds. He didn't really try to explain them or get into any sort of detail, show any evidence. And because of that, the average person watching that video is going to walk away thinking that Ronnie really is a terrible person. And I'm not saying that he isn't. I honestly don't know. I haven't really looked into it all that deep myself. And while you might say that's hypocritical, I'm not the one who's really trying to pursue these allegations against him. If you're going to take it there, I understand why, but you really need to have more respect about the way that you handle it. I know a lot of people really dislike him, and because of that, they're willing to believe any negative accusation about him, but a lot of people really don't like Anthony either. Imagine if I randomly put up a screenshot of an article saying that he's woman without showing any proof. I mean, he would probably call me out and he would expose the fact that I faked that, but at the same time, a lot of people are gonna walk away thinking that it's true. That's why it's so dangerous to talk about allegations like that in such a flippant way. And that's really the main beef that I have with people like Fantano. It doesn't seem like they actually care about the allegation that was made or the victims involved. It seems like they more so want to use it as a point against somebody that they don't like. And while the information is out there and you're perfectly within your rights to do so, I personally like to treat people the way that I want to be treated. And if somebody made an allegation like that about me, I would hope that people would look into it a little bit deeper and have more critical thinking skills than to immediately believe it. And I know a lot of people are going to say that sounds kind of sus. I mean, after all, if you haven't done anything wrong, you're never going to get in trouble. But people make false allegations all the time. I'm not saying that it's as common as people think, but it definitely does happen. It's usually dudes who do it to other dudes. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm alone on this, but personally, I don't want people to just randomly throw around allegations at everybody that they dislike. That happens a lot in the trap metal community, and that's one of the main reasons why I no longer really fuck with it anymore. And like I said, he can do that if that's what he wants to do, but if somebody ends up putting out an allegation about him in the future, I think people are going to be a lot less charitable than they would have been if he didn't blatantly throw it at other people. If you want to play in the mud, if you want to get down in the quicksand, you can do that, but don't be upset when other people do something similar back to you. But luckily, Ronnie wouldn't take it there and instead would take the high road by basically trying to sue Fantano for defamation. And honestly, I can understand why he decided to take this course of action. I mean, he definitely is a bitch for taking down other people's videos, criticizing his music, but when somebody's making accusations like that about you, I can understand why you want to get it taken down. But here's the thing, there's absolutely no shot that you would ever win that lawsuit because proving defamation as a famous person is extremely hard to do. You have to prove that somebody intentionally slandered you to try to hurt your reputation. You got to prove that it did enough damage to your career that you lost a bunch of money. And with a famous person who already has kind of a bad reputation, that's pretty well impossible to do. Not to mention Fantano wasn't actually the one who made the allegations, and because of that, there's absolutely no way that you could ever win. You're allowed to broadcast information that's already publicly available online. If you're not the one who's actually making the false claim and knowingly doing it, well, then you can't be sued for defamation. But despite that, Ronnie would take it through the legal system all the way from 2023 to 2025, and well, like I said, he ended up losing. However, he wouldn't end up saying anything about it until Anthony ended up getting in trouble for the whole N-word controversy, with him immediately dogpiling on him by posting a video basically saying that he took him to court to try to waste his time, basically coping that he didn't care that he lost, even though he definitely did, because if not, you wouldn't be making this video. And not only that, but he recently did a show where he would put Anthony up on screen playing guitar and basically roast him and make fun of his music, which honestly I think is kind of fair. I mean, Anthony made fun of his, so he he's allowed to make fun of him back. And while I do kind of fuck with the energy that he's putting out, it is coming off as a little bit pathetic, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, Anthony definitely did some grimy shit, but at the same time, taking him to court and losing is a pretty big L, and no matter what way you try to flip it, it's not gonna look a whole lot better. But with that said, for now, that's basically the entire beef between the two of them, although I'm sure there probably will be more in the future. I don't think Ronnie's gonna let this go, and I'm sure once things start to cool down for Anthony, he'll definitely have a response. I think right now he's trying to play it safe so he doesn't get into any more trouble, try to let people forget about the whole N-word thing, and then probably in a couple months, maybe by December, he'll probably make a response to capitalize on the whole beef. Or it's definitely possible that he'll completely ignore him, but honestly at this point, I would continue to beef with him. I think it's super entertaining. I think the two of you are made for each other, and honestly, this is probably the most entertaining thing that Fantano has done in the past 4 years. I mean, you rode that entire Kendrick and Drake beef until you couldn't do it anymore, and now you have a brand new beef falling at your feet and you're not gonna get into it? I mean, come on, dude. I mean, this is probably what you need right now, to be honest, because while you definitely are hated by a pretty good chunk of the internet at this point, Ronnie is even more hated. And as everybody knows, beefing with somebody who's more hated than you basically confirms you're gonna get the win. After all, as a wise man once said to me, always punch down, Anthony, always punch down. I don't know why that wise man was calling me Anthony, but either way, good advice. By the way, that was sarcasm. People seem to take absolutely everything I say in these videos extremely literally, and while I'm not trying to do the whole Sam Hyde, everything is a joke thing, that one was a joke. So yeah. But with all that said, what do you think about this entire beef? Are you on Team Anthony or Team Ronnie? Do you think that maybe Anthony took it too far, or do you think that Ronnie Radke deserves it? Let me know in the comments below. Knife Gang, Burger Gang, delete this gang, subscribe to the channel. We're heading to 31K. And with all of that said, I will see you in the next one. Peace out. Bye.